The following is a program of the Santa Barbara County Education Office. To learn more, visit sbceo.org.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools, and I am so delighted to welcome our guest today, Alex Jáuregui, who's the principal of Kermit McKenzie Intermediate School in the Guadalupe Union School District. Alex, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today, and we're really excited about your new leadership at Kermit McKenzie School, new principal for this year, but not new in education, and we will unpack some of the leadership that you're working towards at your school. But before we do, let's start with your childhood and talk about where you were born, raised, a little bit about your family as you were growing up.
So I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, Goleta. Went to Elwood Elementary through 6th grade, Goleta Valley Junior High. And before I went to DP, my family decided to transition and we moved to Los Alamos, where I started school at Rigetti. So I went to Rigetti for high school, kind of stayed in the area, went to UCSB, then went to Cal Poly to get my teaching credential, and then came back and started teaching at Rigetti. And so all of my family, everybody's born and raised Santa Barbara. My brother, 2 years younger than me, same thing. He transitioned and did junior high in Los Alamos at Olga Reed. And from there, we enjoyed this. I moved to Santa Maria and don't see myself moving anywhere else. Mm-hmm. So it's been great.
How was it to move between junior high and high school?
I think it was easier for me compared to my brother because
right?
It was an easier transition since we just finished junior high. Mm-hmm. And so going into a new school, as everybody would for freshman year, mm-hmm. It was good. I appreciated the new school, the different things they had to offer. I am more a visual performing arts type of person compared to my brother, who's athletics. So coming to Rigetti, getting involved with the marimba band, the ballet folklorico, the marching band was definitely right up my alley. So it was something I really appreciated and still remember.
You got right into activities.
Yes.
Yeah, well, good. And I want to talk more about that.
Okay.
And let's go back a little bit again into that childhood. I'd love to know about you as a student. We're both in education. We're both interested in students in schools. How were you as a student? How would you describe yourself? And what sort of activities were you interested in?
So I was the average student.
Okay.
Multiple times I had my parents have to come in and have meetings. Grew up with ADD, sometimes medicated, sometimes not. And so now as an administrator, I kind of see what supports we can do as educators to help our kids. But I was one that was always off the walls, I couldn't sit still. I always wanted to be active and doing stuff. So that kind of resulted in the student that I was. But I think just learning from that and building upon that now as an adult is kind of why I wanted to get into teaching. And since 3rd grade, I knew I wanted to be a teacher.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm. My mom keeps reminding me that, I walked to 3rd grade with a briefcase and was ready to go. And so I was the kid that couldn't sit down, but I was always trying to help my other classmates, get on track, even though I wasn't on track. But I knew that's what I wanted to do.
Alex, I'm picturing you in 3rd grade with a suitcase. What was in that suitcase,
Who
do you
knows?
think?
I borrowed my mom's glasses. I couldn't even tell you anymore, but there was just a bunch of stuff.
I love it. And what were you interested in outside of school when you were a child?
I tried sports,
Mm-hmm.
was not up my alley. Mm-hmm. I was really into music, and so my parents enrolled me in violin lessons. I did that for a couple years. I did some plays in junior high. Just that visual performing arts was really my calling.
Yeah, it sounds like it from a really early age.
Mm-hmm.
Visual performing arts and teaching. And look where you are today. It's come true, and we're going to talk about both for sure. So remind me where you said you went to college.
UCSB.
And what was your major?
History.
History. So somehow you really got to love history, I understand.
Yes.
How did that happen? What's the love? How did
I
the
have
love?
no idea. I wanted to be a science teacher.
Oh.
And then I saw how much math was involved, and I said nope. And so I think it was in junior high, not junior high, high school, just really seeing the different avenues within history. And then when I went to UCSB for my orientation, I really got involved with the Chicano studies and Latino studies and saw what they had to offer. And so that really got me interested. And so I got my bachelor's in history with an emphasis in Chicano Latino history.
Fantastic. And you stayed and got your teaching credential?
At Cal Poly.
Cal Poly.
So after graduating UCSB, I took a year off and I started subbing at the high school district just to make sure that that's still what I wanted to do. And sure enough, it was. And then I applied to Cal Poly, got in, and then got my credential from them.
And so where was your first teaching job?
At Rigetti.
And what were you teaching?
History.
History. So you had a whole day of history.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And at some point, you talked about in third grade knowing you wanted to be a teacher. We all have the image in our mind with the suitcase, which I just think is so great, which is so great. When then did you decide you wanted to be an administrator?
Good question. I think probably once I started getting involved in teaching psychology and getting involved with the concurrent enrollment, so I saw myself taking on more tasks and seeing how I can better help my students. And so, I saw 180 students a day, and, I was really trying to make an impact on their lives. My classroom was open before school, at lunch, after school, during break, passing periods. My classroom was always full, and I always enjoyed building those relationships with our kids. And eventually I realized I can do more. And so, with the advice of my current administrators, Mrs. Rotundi, and some of my other friends that I knew that were working at other schools that were administrators, kind of gave me that nudge saying, hey, you should look into this. And so I had some meetings. John Davis was a huge advocate for me, and he said, you should look at the county office and look into their program, and got involved with Letitia and started asking her questions, and I knew that this was the step I wanted to take. And so I got involved with the admin program there, and I've looked back but haven't looked back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Looking back is important, reflecting on where you're from,
Right, for sure.
lessons learned, but moving forward is also important too. And I don't want to leave Rigetti yet, because I want to leave in terms of the career pathway you took, but I want to linger a little bit because you had said as a student there, you were involved in different aspects of visual and performing arts specifically. So when you were a marimba and the folklorico, but when you were a teacher, were you also involved in that?
I was. So before Mr. Gabaldon Sr. retired, I went back occasionally and would teach new dances or help the trumpet players work on their music. And so it was still a passion of mine that I wanted to go back and teach them, because these were my students that I had in my history class or psychology class. And just going back and saying, hey, I did this too, and bringing dances back that I danced when I was in high school was something that it was a blast. And, I went and I taught a couple at Hancock. And so just, staying invested, staying involved was something that I wanted to continue.
Let's stay on that lane just for one more mile and go to the Mariachi Festival. Santa Barbara Mariachi Festival, is that right?
Yes.
And you are what is your role?
I am the current board president.
Wow. And so that's a big festival that's put on at the Santa Barbara Bowl. Say a bit about, this is an opportunity to talk about the festival.
My sales pitch.
Well, yeah, and not everybody who's watching might have attended or know about it, and the incredible support you provide for students too.
So the Santa Barbara Mariachi Festival is a nonprofit organization that works year-round to essentially put on a huge festival during Old Spanish Days, during fiestas in Santa Barbara. We put on a concert that Saturday at the Santa Barbara Bowl, which is roughly 4,600 people. We do that just to promote and preserve the culture of mariachi music. But what a lot of people don't know, and what we're trying to work on as an organization, is that the revenues from our fundraiser, from that event, go back into our community. And so we give scholarships to 2 seniors at every high school in Santa Barbara County. Whether it's a 4-year university, 2-year university, we want to give back. And so as long as they qualify for what our specific needs are, they get the scholarship. And so we work with the Santa Barbara Scholarship Foundation. We give them our criteria, and we are very happy to be able to give 2 scholarships to every high school. So since our existence, since 1995, we've given over, I want to say, about $800,000 back to the community of Santa Barbara County for our graduating high school seniors.
Wow, thank you for doing that.
No, it's fun, and it's nice to be able to give back.
That's incredible. And you said you played the trumpet.
Yes.
You also said you played the, let's see, what was the first, was it violin lessons? So what other instruments do you play?
I've attempted the accordion. My grandpa taught me to play the accordion. I've played the tuba, the French horn. A lot of those are a little bit easier because I've played the trumpet, but that's pretty much it. I stick to the brass instruments.
And I hear you recently retired from trumpet playing, but yet it's come back again. So talk to us about that.
So somehow the word got out at McKenzie that I played the trumpet, and so I had kids, I want to say the second week of school since band started, coming to my office in the morning, hey, can you come and play with us? I tried to get out of it, saying, oh, I don't have my trumpet, but Mr. Kim came and said, I have a trumpet for you to play, and so I went in and I played with them, and it was fun to get back in there.
Yeah, I bet they were delighted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the other lane of administration, and you were inspired by several people who you named and went and got your credential. So where was your first administrative experience?
So right after getting out of PASC, one of our activities was just apply and get practice for interviewing. And so I applied at Napomo High School and had multiple interviews with them, and eventually around the middle of May I got a job offer to be their area administrator, assistant principal, and it was nerve-wracking. I had to call my fieldwork supervisor, Maria Larios Horton, and lay the question on her, like, do I do it? Is this the right time to make this leap? And her advice that I will always remember is, you will never know when the right time is. You just have to believe in yourself and go. And so I took it, and it was a blast. I really enjoyed investing myself in those students and that staff and learning, and I think John Deno, the principal over there, really helped me build my capacity. And then when I got tapped on the shoulder to apply in Guad, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for that either. But I know some of the teachers there. I know a lot of the staff and what's going on and what they're trying to do. And I said, okay, let's see what happens. And I interviewed and I got it, and it's been a blast ever since.
Yeah. You and I walked through your campus. You graciously welcomed me to go through the campus with you, and as we were doing that, you pointed to so many different classrooms of whom you know the teachers so well. You're connected to the community and to the teachers, so I'm sure the welcome was really warm for you as a new principal.
Yeah.
So what are some of the greatest parts about being a principal at Kermit McKenzie?
So let me start with what I heard from a lot of my friends as teachers when I was teaching is, oh, you want to go to the dark side. And for me, I always hated when people were referred to going into admin as the dark side, because my issue was, okay, I'm dealing with 180 students a day. Now I can deal with an entire school. And so now I can positively impact every student rather than just the students in my class. And so just being able to be there, and the first day of school, we put on the speaker system, and we had music playing, and all of the teachers were out there warming kids up and giving them high fives as they were coming on campus. And immediately I saw multiple parents come up to me crying, saying that this is totally a different experience, that they are appreciative of what we're doing to really get kids engaged and wanting to go back to school and stay in school.
Wow, that's really wonderful. Sounds like from the day one of school with students, you and your team had already thought about the fact that every student needs a champion, every student needs to be seen when they walk into school. And I saw it too, just as you had shared, that teachers were outside of their classrooms greeting every one of their students as they walk in and really giving them eye-to-eye handshakes or high fives, but really giving attention. So that's just brilliant. And so there are probably many, many other wonderful best parts about being a principal. Anything else you'd want to share at the moment of being principal of Kermit McKenzie?
I think just the building of the relationships. I think, and I'm a huge person in regards to building relationships. I think if we can't build relationships, then you're not going to be able to go anywhere. And so I pride myself on the relationships that I can develop, not only with the kids, but with the staff, because that I feel is huge. And being able to build the relationship and build their capacity as educators is one of my main philosophies that we need to be focusing on.
And one of the things you're focusing on, we talked about, is a book that you have read. In fact, it's a book the book that you read based on people that you heard speak, I understand. Share with us the book, and really more importantly, probably the people, and what is their message, and what do you want to do with that?
So, Transformational Leadership, written by Anthony Mohammed and Luis Cruz, was probably one of the main motivations into helping me understand what I need to do as a leader to best service my students and my staff. And so I went to a PLC conference last summer.
PLC?
Professional Learning Communities, put on by Solution Tree in San Jose. And that's where I met them in person, really got to feel what they were all about, listen to their stories, and that was me. And so just reading their book helped me realize what I wanted to focus on and what I wanted to practice at McKenzie, which is change is uncomfortable, but it's not unreasonable. And so you can ask all my staff that's the one thing that I say at every staff meeting, because there are constant changes that we're making, and they're not always going to be comfortable for us, but they're not unreasonable. These are changes that we're making, things that we're doing to best benefit our kids. And so the 4 tips that they give in that book really helped me in stepping foot on McKenzie and figuring out where I want to go and how we can have a shared vision on moving forward together as a school.
Can you share one of the 4 tips?
I think building relationships is huge. I think that feeding into that really, backs me up on my philosophy that if you don't build relationships with your staff, you can't expect them to go the long run with you. And the one thing that I've learned about the staff at McKenzie is they will go to the ends of the earth for these kids. And I want to be right there with them. And so I'm not going to push them to the ends of the earth. I'm going to walk and run there with them.
That's really nice. And so, Alex, you've really studied leadership. You studied how to be a teacher, the teaching credential program. You've studied how to be an administrator with the administrative program. And I know that you're continuing to learn as a leader, both the book that you just shared, but also in practice every day. How do you plan to continue to hone your leadership skills, or how do you hone your leadership skills?
So I think it's the network that I've created and that I'm continually adding to. And so right now I have a coach, Juan Olivaria, who is a retired teacher from the Lucia Mar Unified School District, who we meet usually twice a month just to talk about what's going on. He will just ask random questions just to see where I'm at, and it helps me think outside of the box. And so I meet with other administrators, friends that are teachers, educators, because I believe that I'm still a lifelong learner and that I'm going to continue to learn. But surrounding myself with those individuals will always help me increase and build my capacity as being a leader.
Yeah. So you just mentioned a coach or mentor that you have, and one of the things I know leaders think about a lot are people who've really inspired them and taught them all along the way. And so he's one. I'm just wondering if you might want to share others that have really inspired you or have been mentors for you along the way. And they could be friends, family members, just people in your past. And what have they taught you?
So my grandfather has always been an advocate for me, especially when I became a teacher, always calling me to ask, how's it going? How are your kids doing? He was one, he passed before I became an administrator. And so it was rough taking that position. But the second that I got the job, my grandma called me and she said, he's looking down on you, smiling, know that you've taken the right step. And so he's always been my number one champion. My parents always, behind me 110%. Karen Rotundi at Rigetti has been a good one. She, during my last year at Rigetti, really kind of helped build my capacity as a teacher, giving me some more responsibilities outside of the classroom because she knew the program that I was in. I think she saw that I was destined to be an administrator, so she helped me get my feet on the ground. John Davis, again, at Assistant Soup, interim soup right now for the high school district, definitely, had really good conversations with me that I don't think teachers that weren't going into administration would understand. And so he really helped me think outside of the box in a leadership capacity before I was a leader. And so that definitely helped me on my path.
It sounds like those who've really inspired you or helped you were absolutely encouraging, gave you pretty straight advice,
Yes.
it sounds like. And I know that feedback and input is one of the big characteristics or skill sets that we want teachers to provide for students. And honestly, we need those for ourselves too.
All right.
Right, don't we? We need that honest, straightforward feedback, and it sounds like those individuals that you just talked about and listed did that for you. You also talked about your grandfather. You talked about your parents. So let's talk about your family. Who's in your family right now, your immediate family?
So right now I have my wife, who is currently working at Mary Buren Elementary, which is the feeder school into my intermediate school. My 6-year-old daughter, Sophie. She's a first grader at Alice Shaw. I have a 3-year-old, just turned 3, Ava, who goes to Columbia Children's Center. And I have an 11-month-old who will turn 1 next month, Mateo.
Wow, maybe we should just pause there and think about the busy life that you have at home, or you all have at home together. Wonderful. It sounds really rich and wonderful. And I think I heard a very sweet story about your wife that you just talked about. I got a chance to meet her and would love to know what you think about having your wife in the same district. But that's not the question. The question is, how did you meet?
So we met in junior high. I was at Goleta Valley. We met through a CalSoap program that took us to Westmont. So she didn't go to Goleta Valley. We met there. It was a week-long program. And, I say it was love at first sight. I don't know if she agrees with me. But we met there. Since the program, we were kind of pen pals because that's when we learned that I was moving to Santa Maria. And so we wrote to each other for a little while, and then that kind of died off. And then I think it was walking down the hallway at Rigetti my senior year, and I just randomly looked back, and it was her. And I'm like, wait a minute, like flash from the past. And so she said that her family moved up here, and so we were both seniors at Rigetti. We didn't really talk much. She had a boyfriend at the time, I had a girlfriend at the time, so it was just, a friendship, reigniting that. And it was weird because we look at our senior class picture and we're sitting like right next to each other. So that was funny. Graduated high school, a couple years into college. We both had a job at the Olive Garden, and so we reconnected. She ended up moving back to Santa Barbara. And so once I got involved with the Mariachi Festival, I had purchased my first house and posted some pictures on social media, and she had commented, and we kind of started talking on social media. And then I said, hey, I'm putting on this event in Santa Barbara. Would you like to go? And she said, sure. And that was it.
That was it.
She was stuck with me for the rest of her life.
The love at first sight in junior high. Yeah, that's really sweet. I like that story so much. And with 3 children at home and in school, and your wife and you working, how do you find a little bit of time to relax and unwind and find a little bit of balance? I think it's important that leaders do get a chance to kind of refresh. So how do you find that today, that you're able to do that?
It's hard. She gets home obviously earlier than I do. But she was the one person I had to ask before I became a principal. And I said, are we sure we're going to do this? It's not my decision, it's our decision, because Ava was 1 and we didn't know about Mateo, or didn't even anticipate Mateo. And she said, she's like, this is what I know you want to do. And so she supported me 110%. And so we try to do what we can with the time that we can. So usually when I get home in the evenings, we'll cook dinner together, and we'll sit down as a family and just kind of talk. And then once the kids go to bed, we'll close out the night. Just how was your day? And then usually on the weekend we'll try to do something as a family. And then if not, I try to remember we got to do date night. We got to remember it was us before them, so we got to make sure that we have time for ourselves. So we try to squeeze in time whenever we can.
Thank you for sharing that. And you know, I think what you said as the first response is probably so true. It's hard. It's really hard. You have a very demanding job, so does she. And with your children being the ages they are, they need mom and dad so much that it is probably very hard. But I appreciate that you shared that when you can do it, you connect with each other, but you also find a little bit of time to hopefully relax, take a deep breath, sleep. Sleep and rest and have a good time together, that's for sure. So as a principal with the students in your school, you're really wanting to, I'm sure, it's so important to engage parents and caregivers with their children in school. So is there a particular message that you're sharing with parents and caregivers right now in terms of really engaging with their children and engaging with school?
The biggest thing that we're trying to do right now is create a culture of involvement, both with teachers and parents and everybody on the same team, because I think that's something that a lot of people aren't understanding of, and that we are all here for the same reason. We want our kids to succeed. We want to be there to support them. And so just trying to open up that avenue and inform parents that, you know, we're here. You know, I let them know at back to school time that my door's open 24/7. If you have questions, comments, come in and talk to me. And a lot of parents have, and it's been great to hear that feedback and the compliments that they're giving, not only to the administration, but to the staff. And I think sharing all of that with everybody is huge. But really, you know, one of my big things is that all students should succeed and can succeed, and it's our job to ensure that. And so it's our job as educators, but it's our job as parents and community members to all ensure that we're all on the same team for our kids' success.
Thank you, and this is a great opportunity for us to have you share a message to those who are watching today about the students, the youth in Guadalupe. This is your first foray into Guadalupe, and so you've had an opportunity to really get a glimpse at really what it's like in Guadalupe. Tell us what's so brilliant about it.
I think that everybody sees that there's so much potential and there's so much untapped potential. And I think that as a team, teachers, students, everybody, parents, community members, we can change the trajectory of our students and show them that we have amazing kids in Guadalupe that deserve the world. And as long as we're all on the same page and are all doing what we can for our kids are going to be successful. And all kids can be successful.
Absolutely. I know that you have the heart and the attention of the students at Kermit McKenzie. I mean, you're playing the trumpet with them. So I know that they're really keen on having you there. And obviously the teachers and families too. But when your students watch this, I'd love to have you provide them a message as our last question for this interview, or last opportunity for you to share. So if you're thinking about the students at Kermit McKenzie now, what is it that you'd like for them to hear you say?
I've got your back.
Nice. I like it. Alex, it's been really wonderful to be able to talk with you and share about your story, your successes, your continual learning. It's really wonderful to have your leadership in Guadalupe. And I know that you have an extremely strong team there alongside you as colleagues at the district, but also at your school. Clearly, your wife is one of them. But I just really want to thank you for sharing and revealing what it's like to be a bit new in terms of a role and principal at a school. And we really, really appreciate your vision and your leadership. So, Alex, thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
I'm Susan Salcido, Santa Barbara County Superintendent of Schools. Thank you so much for joining us today for this edition of Education Matters.